Good evening and welcome to tonight's On the Sofa. We've got the great pleasure of having Tom Jones with us this evening, joining Vic. Just a couple of things. The James Monroe restoration of his grave, we are very pleased to say that we have reached the target amount for that, the 1,500. So thank you everybody who donated to that. And as of that, I will bring on Vic. Hiya, Vic.
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's great news about the James Monroe grave.
Fantastic.
And it'd be
Really
wonderful to see that
fantastic.
restored. A wonderful story,
Exactly.
which we covered with Dick Mattick the other week. So that's great. Fantastic.
Yes, we'll have to have a look at it when it's done and put it up on here, show the photo. So
yes,
brilliant. So let's bring Mr. Jones on, and I will leave you to it. Good evening, Tom.
Hi, guys.
Hiya. So any questions that you have for Tom, please leave them in the comments, and I will be back later. We'll fit as many in as we can during the conversation, and any that are left over, we'll see if we can fit them in at the end. Okay.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. Tom, a great welcome to you. Thank you ever so much for joining us this evening. Great pleasure to see you again. I would. It's not quite a £2.7 million Downing Street backdrop, but we did our best. That's all I can say with the backdrop here. Great to see you. Let's start right at the beginning. Born in Aldershot in 1964, you had a youth career with Chelsea and Farnborough. Is that right? Take us through those early days.
Yeah, started really with the local Sunday sides, as we all do. Got scout in a little village called Ashvale, picked me up, and the next day I was off to Chelsea and stayed there until I was nearly 19 years of age. Was offered pro at the time, but then a lovely guy called Ken Bates came in, bought the club for £1 and blocked it. So actually, having been offered a pro, was taken away from me. Had to go and fight for, my career, and ended up signing for Farnborough Town in the old Isthmian League, and at 2 years with them, and then Weymouth came calling, and that's where the heights of non-league football sort of went really well for me, and then obviously ended up turning pro.
Yeah, we'll go from that extraordinary move from Weymouth to Aberdeen in a minute, but at a young age, you've gone from the highs to the lows, really, haven't you, of professional football? And how did that feel at the time? You were picked up early by Chelsea, thought you were on the way, and then it didn't work out. How was that?
Devastating. Cried my eyes out on the way home on a train, having had the manager tell me that I was signing pro. But back then it was John Neal, Ian McNeil was the assistant. And then obviously Ken Bates had the last shout and said, no, we're not going to take any more youngsters. So having to travel back on the train without a pro contract, you're wondering what you've got to do, because obviously you're 16, 17 years of age, now having to go searching for a club. And that, having been on trials at Arsenal, Crystal Palace, Southampton, and I just decided, a lovely fella called Brian Pob Robson gave me some really good advice. He was a Chelsea reserve team manager at the time, and he just said, go and play non-league football. It might take you a couple of years to get back. He said, but you'll get back.
And this is the Brian Pob Robson that was at West Ham, not the Brian Robson of Man United in England. Is that right? Yeah.
He's a big Sunderland, West Ham player. Lovely man, gave me really good advice, and I took his advice. Played, as I say, for Farnborough for a couple of years, and then the move to Weymouth was a good move for me. They were a big club in non-league football. They just sold Andy Townsend, and they wanted to take me to replace him. Signed a 2-year contract, but after year one, got in the England non-league team, and then got scouted again, and I was told that Aberdeen were watching me, and that was the beginning.
Yeah, extraordinary. I'm fascinated by that move, and we will talk about it in a moment. But when that thing at Chelsea happened, was there any counselling, or was it up to your family? I mean, you said you were devastated. You were on the train, presumably you were on the train on your own with your thoughts. I mean,
yeah,
how do you come to terms with that?
Not very easy, because you've had something offered to you. Probably wouldn't happen today, like with lawyers, etc. And that, but it was the times back then, and you just have to fight for yourself and believe in yourself, and that's what I did. I went away, trained really hard, probably harder than ever, just to try and get something back that was taken away from me.
Well, you showed extraordinary fortitude. So there you are. You're playing at Weymouth, which I understand because I live not far, from Dorset. Is on the south coast, right? Aberdeen is a little bit further away than Weymouth. So how, in the name of, I don't know, very large hills, does that happen? That Aberdeen come to Weymouth?
The manager, Brian Godfrey, at the time at Weymouth, lovely man, God bless him, he's not with us now, but he did say to me when he signed me, he was there when he came to the house with my parents, sat me down, he just said, look, sign a 2-year contract. If it doesn't work out after year 1, we'll let you go at your choice. He said, I believe, he said, I can sell you. And he was always really good, saying which clubs were watching me. And then on a midweek game, I always remember it, at Welling, he's come and said, Aberdeen are watching you. They've watched you several times. Watch this space. And a few months later...
Did you ever find out why they were interested in you? Because it just seems so bizarre, because, Aberdeen is one of the big clubs, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest. They're a huge club in terms of where they were at the time, I guess. So did you ever find out how they got in touch with you, how they got interested in you?
Yeah, Ian Porterfield, from his time in England, had a scout, and obviously, watching around, Ian was very good at picking up bargain buys. I suppose I was a bargain buy back then. And yeah, the rest was really history. I just got a phone call at work. We used to have the old CB radios then. I believe it or not, I was fixing tea and coffee machines for a couple of years, having that to play non-league football. And Office got in touch with me and said, you need to ring your manager, Brian Godfrey, and stopped at the old phone box in Basingstoke. I always remember that. Stopped it and gave him a call, and he just said that Aberdeen wanted to sign me, and would I be interested?
Wow, because Ian, of course, yeah. Ian Porterfield features later in your life, which we'll get to. Did you have a CB handle, by the way, or?
I always remember Victor 5-2. Victor 5-2 to Victor Base.
Oh, brilliant!
It was great.
Those were the days, eh?
Yeah.
Goodness me. So there you go. You got to Aberdeen, which I guess is a bit of a culture shock, because it is a long way, let's be fair. And it's a total change of environment from the south coast to Aberdeen, which is pretty darn cold in the winter. So how much of a shock was it for you when you got there?
I suppose you just grow into it, really. And I always remember that when Wimbledon was on and Wimbledon was rained off. I think it was the time when Cliff Richard started singing. It was raining. We were on Balmeedy Beach getting sunburned.
And is that the one near Pittodrie? Is that the beach near Pittodrie? That one?
Yeah, it's just a little bit further up. You've got the golf course right outside Pittodrie, and then a little bit further up, beautiful sand dune beach called Balmeedy. And we were actually getting burnt and barbecuing on the beach.
Wow, that's well. There you go. That tells me what it was like in Aberdeen. I mean, what was it? What was the football like? Because often we look at the Scottish Premier League, don't we? We don't think, well, is it the same as England football? But how was it when you got there?
I think people underestimate it. It's very competitive, very fast, ferocious, and of course, at the time when I was there, it was full of internationals at Rangers. Graham Souness being the manager, and they were full of all the English internationals, Chris Woods, Ray Wilkins, etc. You had quite a number. Terry Butcher, Graham Roberts. Jesus, they were full of. Trevor Francis was playing then, so people underestimated it. Of course, they still didn't win the league. Celtic won it that year as well.
It's either Celtic or Rangers, to be fair, isn't it? Normally every year. So then you weren't there for a long time, were you? Because I made just about 30 appearances, 3 goals, and then a certain club called Swindon come in for you with Lou Macari as manager. How did that come about? Because I'm guessing the Scottish connection was part of it. Was that how it worked?
Yeah, I mean, you always hear things, and Louis was at quite a few of our games. You know, when I was playing either first team or reserves, and he came up and watched a reserve team game. The manager had changed at that time. Ian had been sacked, and they brought in 3 Scottish managers. I have to say, didn't particularly like the English, and I was the last one left of all the English players. And really, without being sour grapes, I was really forced out. With Swindon being interested, that they made that aware. But first of all, the manager said that Peterborough had offered a transfer fee for me, and they were interested in selling me to Peterborough. I did actually go and speak to Peterborough the day before I signed for Swindon. But I made a phone call to Lou Macari because I knew that he was interested, and he just said, get on the next train. And I was met at Cheltenham Station on a Saturday morning, and I signed Saturday afternoon.
And how were they at the minute at that time? I mean, you'd obviously heard about Swindon's rise. There was the 85-86 season, which they dominated in Division 4, you know, and they looked as though they're a club on the rise. What were your thoughts about? So it was closer to home, of course, if you're an old shot boy. So was that a big draw for you?
It was, yeah. Having spent sort of 18 months away in Aberdeen, Swindon were also, you know, Division 2 then. Peterborough were Division 4, and I just really felt that I'd come from, you know, fought my way up to a good level, and I knew I could play at that level. So, you know, it was a no-brainer really that Swindon were a rising club and looking, you know, to go forward. So, you know, they sold it to me within a couple of hours. I was speaking to Lou Macari and the chairman.
Debut against Crystal Palace, I think, wasn't it, in the League Cup? It was a 2-1 defeat. But the following week, your league debut against Watford, in which you got a goal. So, you know, forgive me, and I mean this with all due respect, you're not noted for a lot of goals in your career, but, you know, to get one on your league debut, that's pretty good.
One sec.
Yeah, okay, no problem with that.
Trying to call my wife here.
Oh, dear. Okay. Well, we'll just wait for that to subside. Okay, is it gone? It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone now.
Right, so... Yeah, not noted for a lot of goals in your career, and I don't mean any disrespect by that, but you got a goal on your league debut, is that right?
Yeah, as it happens, you know, when I turned pro, I didn't really score a lot of goals, but non-league player, I was, you know, up sort of 16, 18 goals a year. I suppose that's what got my move, and I was always an attacking midfielder. And that's, but yeah, you're right. To score on my debut, I should have scored about 3 when I came on against Crystal Palace. I think I hit the post, the bar, one off the line, and that's so you know, to score the winning goal at Watford was great.
And tell us about the spirit in the camp when you came into the team, because as I said, it's a side on the up. And what's the basis of that 1990 team? Was that really beginning to form?
Yeah, I think. Louis had sold the likes of Jimmy Quinn, Dave Bamber, and Chris Kamara, with 3 big names at Swindon at the time. And a new regime came in. The likes of myself, Ross McLaren, Duncan Shearer were all new signings. Different type of players, I think. Louis had his way of playing, which was, you know, get the ball forward, play in the opposition's half, which suited a lot of the lads because we were fit, hungry, wanted to win, and hence, you know, we ended up being in the playoffs at the end of that season. I think by Christmas we were in the bottom 3.
Yeah, Didn't work out that season though, did it? In 88, 89, it narrowly missing out in the playoffs. Is that right?
Yeah, lost out to Crystal Palace, and really we should have hammered them to County Ground. We only won 1-0, and then having to go to Selhurst Park. They scored 2 early goals, and the rest is history, really. I did my cartilage in that game.
Yeah, I did, and they had the likes of Salako, they had the likes of Wright and Bright, didn't they? They had a decent team. But that home game, if I remember right, it was on a Sunday afternoon, a very bright, breezy, windy day, wasn't it? When it was difficult to play football, I guess, that day.
Yeah, bumpy pitch. They're not like the surfaces of this day. It's a difficult place to go to any time. Crystal Palace, is a big club, but like I say, we had beaten them in the first game and dominated the game and should have won by more. And I suppose that was a big factor in the replay, having to go there and hold on to a narrow lead. And they got 2 early goals, and it made life difficult for us.
You mentioned your cartilage then. Tell us about that. Because cartilage injuries were always looked upon as very serious for footballers. How was it for you?
Yeah, it was just a block tackle, and I'd actually come in at half time and spoke to Kev Morris and just said, I just can't run. Many people will say that's not unusual. Stop the fun.
Yeah, you said it. I didn't. I deliberately not said.
But back then there was only ever 2 subs, and Steve Foley was struggling with his ankle. He had cortisone injections in an ankle, and so he was struggling. And then Tim Parkin actually got a poke in the eye and he couldn't see. So 5 minutes into the start of the second half, we've had to make 2 substitutions, and I had to stay on. I stayed on for the full 90, and not being able to move. Diagnosis the next day, went in to see Kev, said, I think you need to go and see a surgeon, and it was diagnosed that I'd torn my cartilage.
So what happened?
I was none too pleased, really. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but I might as well disclose it now. I'd actually said to Louis that I needed to come off. He said, no, you need to go back out, give it 5. And then two substitutions were made, and I was made to stay on. I have to say I didn't take too kindly to it at the time. Probably didn't like losing as well. And then I ended up putting a transfer request in, because I just felt that I played every minute of every game since I joined the club, and when asked to come off, I wasn't allowed to come off.
And so what effect did that have on your summer? You put the transfer request in, presumably. Well, it wasn't granted because you stayed at Swindon. What happened during that summer? Because there was a change of manager, of course. New regime comes in, which we'll get to in a minute. But how did that affect your summer? Because the playoffs for a footballer are great if you win them, but of course it's an extension to the season. It means less rest anyway, doesn't it? So how did that affect you?
I just sort of waited, really. Louis had decided to move on, and I actually went to see Ozzy Ardiles, and I just said that, I don't want to leave the club. I like the club. It was done as a reaction. And I'd like to withdraw the transfer request and stay. So that's what happened. I got through pre-season. I think I missed the first 2 games, and then Ozzy decided to give up playing because I think he put himself on at Oldham and gave 2 goals away. I've been 2-0 up, and he just said to me, he says, "I'm not ever playing again." He says, "And you'll be starting on Saturday."
What about that day when Ozzy Ardiles walks in the club? Because I remember my reaction, thinking, "My gosh!" I watched this player play for Argentina in the '78 World Cup on a grainy black and white TV. A wonderful, wonderful footballer. He comes to Tottenham, and then he's there managing Swindon. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
Yeah, I mean, it's a breath of fresh air, really. I mean, I think all the players, and probably we knew that the style of football would change, straight away. and that obviously, a few personnel will have to change as well because of the way that Ozzy wanted to play. Right from day one, training was a different, ball game, different drills. Everything was with a ball. Everything was, as Ozzy would say, play, play, play.
Yeah, extraordinary. And I think the first evidence of that was Andy Rowland's testimonial. I think was it against West Ham, if I remember rightly. I might be wrong here, but we all sort of went, "Wow." Lou's side was great and achieved what it achieved, and nobody will ever take that away. But the change was dramatic, wasn't it?
Yeah, and there wasn't that many changes in personnel, really. I think Ozzy brought in the likes of Dave Kerslake very early on from Queen's Park Rangers, and then the introduction of players like Mickey Hazard and that. My wife. This is my daughter now.
She's very busy tonight.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, so the new personnel coming in, and then there was this extraordinary run, wasn't there, during that season? I think it was 26, 27 games when the team was the same team, which seems extraordinary now, doesn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, it just wouldn't happen today with the size of the squads and the way they do the rotation system. I don't think you speak to every player back when we were playing, they wouldn't like saying a manager telling you, "I want to rest you for this," or "You're coming off," even though you've been the best player. And that, but now it's a different culture, different ways and techniques, and the way coaches and managers see the game. And but certainly players of my time wouldn't like being substituted.
No, you just wanted to play as much as you possibly could, didn't you? Simple as that.
Yeah, I had a look at my appearances. I was at Swindon for 4 years, and I think I averaged 50 games a year. For 4 years. So that's a pretty good average. To play 50 games on average for 4 years.
Yeah, extraordinary. And I remember that run. We, in my job then, it was obviously reporting on Swindon. To go in every week and say to Ozzy, "What's the team?" And he'd say, "Same team, same team, same team, same team," every week. And it was just incredible. And I think the first time there was a change, it was like a seismic shock throughout the whole building, wasn't it? I mean, it was an incredible run.
Yeah, I think the players, at the time accepted it because the style of football and the training was enjoyable. Ozzy was an unbelievable manager in terms of the way he talked to people, he looked after people, understood family life, and if you needed a chat, he'd be there for you. And obviously, like, the players gave everything, to him as a man and as a football club. Hence, I think that's the reason why we had such success, because of the players that were there were just installed, to do the best for the football club.
How enjoyable was it to play that sort of football?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I've always been a footballer. I don't like long ball stuff, and the way I coach is always with a ball to pass it. Of course, there's times that you can't, and you have to get rid of it, doing the right thing at the right time. Ozzy just every day, it's just play, pass it, and I think players could just rotate. We had players that could step into different positions if things didn't happen. And I think that was the beauty of the squad, that people could adapt and play different positions.
You had people like Chick Bates as well in the background, didn't you? How much of a help was somebody like Chick Bates? Because he'd been at the club as a player. How much of a help was he?
Yeah, Chick was he was a quiet man. Took most of the coaching, to be quite honest. Sessions. I really like Chick, and the blend between Ozzy and Chick, was the right chemistry, and I think that's why, the team did so well. Yeah,
extraordinary times. There was the League Cup saga with Bolton. What do you remember of that?
God, yeah. I think it's about 3 games. 4 games we played.
4 games in total. I don't think you played in the last one. But there was the 1-1 draw at Burnham Park, and the next 3-3 draw at Swindon, 1-1 draw at Burnham Park, another 1-1 draw at Burnham Park, and then the fourth game at Swindon.
I remember the goal. Ross scored the winner, I think. Ross McLaren from the edge of the box, funded it in the top corner.
Yeah, 117 minutes after extra time. We were 3 minutes away from another replay. Extraordinary.
I know.
It was an incredible game. And do you remember much about it? Because it was just like, when is this ever going to end?
Yeah, I don't know the reason why I didn't play. I must have been. I didn't get injured very often, so I must have been suspended, because I know I got sent off once against Wolverhampton Wanderers. So I can't quite recall why I didn't play in the game. Probably dropped.
I doubt it. So let's get into that the playoff season then. You get Blackburn in the semi, and Stigger Foley gets a fabulous goal, doesn't he? On that Sunday afternoon up at Ewood Park, wonderful goal. Tell us about those semi-finals, because the second leg, the county ground's bouncing, isn't it? Everything is fabulous. Tell us about those semi-finals.
I always remember those two games. They stick in my memory, because I always remember like travelling towards Ewood Park, and there was a pub, and the whole road was blocked by Swindon fans, and the lads were just going mad, like in the coach, to see that many like fans there. And obviously, we were 2-0 up and gave them a chance. I think the last 10 minutes, they got a goal back. But as you say, like the replay at the county ground was unbelievable in a midweek game. I think we scored 2 really early goals. To go 4-1 up, and I think they dominated the rest of the game and obviously got a goal back. But fond memories, like the scenes afterwards, like amazing. Yeah,
fabulous. And of course, it meant the first appearance at Wembley since 1969, of course, and the legendary game against Arsenal. So there you are. You've still got the rest of the season. You played the rest of and we should mention, of course, that you finished 4th that season, which at that time was the highest that Swindon Town had ever finished in Division 2. Great achievement.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, when you consider the clubs in it with Sunderland, Newcastle, because I think Sunderland might have picked Newcastle in the other playoffs, I think it was. But, I mean, the big clubs that we were playing against, the likes of Derby, Ipswich, West Brom. I think Leeds were in there. Did Leeds win it?
I will check that in a minute. But I remember Leeds. You beat Leeds at the county ground in a memorable game, didn't you?
3-2, I remember
they had some fantastic footballers in those days. I mean, that was a terrific game, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were all ill as well, because we'd gone to a health farm, believe it or not, Ashby de la Zeus. And about 6 of us got caught a bug. And we were all obviously like small squad. We forced out to play, and we got a great result, 3-2. I think there was an incident towards the end. Howard Wilkerson wasn't happy.
Yeah, I remember walking past the Leeds dressing room, and they were all sat in their rather glum face at the end of the game. They weren't happy, were they, about that particular defeat? So Wembley's approaching, the Twin Towers. Yes, Leeds did win the league, by the way. We can confirm that one. So Wembley's approaching. Sheffield United finished 2nd. I'm getting all this help coming in now. As I said, my memory's getting on a bit. So Wembley, 1990, a bank holiday Monday. Sunderland playing blue. You play in red. I can give you the team now. Digby, Bowden, Calderwood, Gittins, Kerslake, Alan McLaughlin, who, of course, we send our best wishes to at the moment because, he's not too well. So we wish him all the very best. Steve Foley, Tom Jones, Ross McLaren, Duncan White, and not Duncan White, Duncan Shearer and Steve White. Duncan White. We should. Yeah, good. We should mention, of course, actually, 0-0 draw at Newcastle when there were over 50 goals between the 4 strikers, and it ended up 0-0, didn't it? It was just a bonkers
I just
night.
remember that game. That 0-0 game, I think it was one of the most exciting 0-0s you would have ever watched. It was end-to-end stuff. We got a standing ovation when we finished the game.
Yeah, it was an incredible night, an incredible atmosphere. It was the first night I sort of really experienced the Newcastle atmosphere. There'd been games against Newcastle in the past, and the infamous 5-0 FA Cup defeat. But that was a wonderful atmosphere on a balmy summer's evening, so it sticks in the mind. So to Wembley then, how did you feel? The Twin Towers. You got rejected by Chelsea. You played for Farnborough. You've been to Aberdeen. How did you feel?
It was like a dream come true. Everybody wants to play at Wembley. There's been many famous players never even got the chance to, play on the pitch and the Twin Towers, and that to have that on your CV as such, absolutely tremendous. I just remember walking out in our suits, our grey suits, looking around. Obviously, lots of friends and family there, but ever so proud.
Yeah, and we should say, of course, it wasn't the Wembley of '69 when the pitch was like an allotment. This was a pretty good pitch. It was a hot afternoon, and I think it's fair to say you ran Sunderland ragged, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it was the biggest 1-0 that I'd ever played in. I did a Q&I at Reading back in I was when Chelsea played Reading at the Medeski, Frank Lampard's first game, and there was a group of Sunderland supporters on a table, and they mentioned that game, and I said it was the biggest murder that there was, and they totally agreed, and they said that they should never have gone up in front of us, because it was a bit of a disgrace, really, like to let us play and win.
Yeah, we'll get to those events of 10 days later in a minute, but of course Alan, who we just mentioned, he gets the winner. Well, does he get the winner? I mean, what's your view of that? I mean, of course Alan McLaughlin's got the winner, or did he?
Oh,
what's your view?
It crossed the line.
I suppose if you're Gary Bennett, you say Alan McLaughlin's got the goal, don't you? Really, you don't want to own that one, do you?
Exactly.
Yeah. And it was quite early on. It wasn't, so there was a bit of, it was a long way to go in the game, wasn't there? But when you scored that goal, did you think, do you know what? We've got this.
God, yeah. I mean, we had so many chances. I think, between Duncan and Steve White, they must have had like 2-3 chances each. I think Steve Foley had a couple of good shots. I had one. The keeper's Tony Norman diving the wrong way, and it's hit the end of his toe. Probably should have done better myself. But I don't think after the first 10 minutes, I think Gabardini had a shot, or Eric Gates, one or the other, and I think that was about their only offer in the 90 minutes.
How strong were you as a team? You know what I mean by that? Not just as a team on the pitch, but off the pitch.
Yeah, we had a lot of good lads, good in the changing rooms, winners. And if you did something wrong, you knew it, because if it wasn't one, there'd be another one coming at you. Come on, and I think that bodes, and it just makes you stronger, not just mentally, physically, as a player individually. You know that somebody's got your back, because we all go through bad periods in games where you're not playing well, or a couple of passes go astray, and you just get that little reminder. Come on, better than that, and you are. You've made your mistakes, but as an individual, you've got to be strong enough and big enough in which to get through those periods and not go into a shell and you go missing. And
that camaraderie, we said, with 26, 27 games in a row, you know what each other's doing. You've got formidable defence behind you, haven't you? And, you've got two of the most prolific strikers in the league, for goodness sake, up front. You've got a wonderful midfield. Everything's there, isn't it? All the components are there.
That was it. I think it was just the right blend, and sometimes you get that in teams, and you know what you're going to get out of those certain individuals. the likes of Alan McLaughlin. I think he ended up with about 16, 17 goals that year as well. To get that from midfield. Steve Foley always chipped in with his goals, but it was just the amount of chances I think that we made, the football that we played. I know, like from my side of the pitch, where it was like Dave Kerslake at right back, and then I'm like more right midfield, and then at times Dave would go past me and I'd sit in at right back until we could alter and then get back into your starting position. And it was just a rotation that Ozzy encouraged. It didn't matter if I think there were times when Dave Kerslake, when he went on his dribbles, ended up, left wing and whatever. But I'd just sort of drop back in so that you were never exposed. And I think that was the sort of thing that makes you, as a team, a lot harder to get at. And obviously, we scored so many goals that year and so many chances created. For two strikers to have 26, 27 goals, I think it was, between them. They were always fighting to see who was going to be the top goal scorer, just to nick a goal. But they're two good finishers.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. And I always remember one game up at Sunderland at the old Roker Park where Swindon were on the defence, and all of a sudden there were like 4 dazzling passes in the other end, and you're going, wow. It's just a moment. It's in my head forever, and I can see it now. That was the quality of football you were playing, wasn't it? It was just dazzling at times. Simple as that. Yeah,
it's strange. The North East used to be really, really good for us for the results. We went to places like Middlesbrough and won. So I don't know. It was always nice travelling days, and being such long journeys. It's always great to come back with 3 points.
Yes. What about then? You win, obviously. You're first division bound, as it was in those days. But there's this cloud hanging over it. How much of it did you know about in terms of what might or might not happen? What was your move? Because Alan McLaughlin, of course, is famously, we know, went straight off to the World Cup to play for the Republic of Ireland. So he was kind of out of it, wasn't he, in terms of taken out of that whole situation. How do you remember that period?
We were kept really out of it, for quite a considerable, right up until the day of the hearing. I'm going to be honest with you. I live in West Swindon. I was out jogging that day, and then somebody stopped the car, shouted, said that you'd been relegated. I'm like, I better run faster to get home and listen to the radio and what had happened, because we were as shocked as anything. As I say, leading up to the game, there was no mention of us being pulled out of the game, and the game was played. I just felt at the time, if you play the game, the players and the supporters, you don't allow that to happen if you're going to relegate a team. I think the FA got it completely wrong, and that because, like I say, it's people's livelihood. You played the game, we won fair and square. I always said, if we'd have won 5-6-0, would they have relegated us? Because it was such a one-sided game, which it could have easily been 5 or 6. And being one, I think it may be a little bit easier for the FA to make the decision.
It was an extraordinary time and an extraordinary aftermath. How aware were you of the protests, the petitions, everything else that was going on? Because it was, let's face it, I mean, this is the biggest thing that's ever happened in Swindon Town Football Club's history, promotion to the First Division. And I think it's fair to say you'd have done okay. You wouldn't necessarily have gone, top 6 or anything daft, but I think you would have done okay, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we felt that, because there was such a confidence running through the whole of the club at the time. To take something away from you that you've earned, that the whole club, that includes everybody, from the groundsman, everybody worked hard to get to that position, and as I say, to make a decision 10 days later to take it away from you. I always remember, God bless him, Ian St John, St Ingreavesy. I always remember that he had the referee Dole, and he threw it at the camera and said, biggest disgrace ever. So it was the first time that anybody sort of then had showed any sort of like compassion, and it was the wrong decision, and that it's like difficult to take.
Sure. Well, for every Swindon fan, as you know, it was difficult to take. So the following season, then, you eventually you're back in Division 2. The drop to Division 3 was repealed, and you were put back in Division 2. And then you went and won at Charlton on the opening day, which is an extraordinary result, bearing in mind what had happened in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I think we had the right ingredients in terms of the players, the mentality, and that sometimes you don't agree with decisions that are made, but you've still got to go out and perform to your best of your ability, and obviously for the football club. You can feel sorry for yourself and go there and get beat, and people then start judging you and said, "Oh, now you're on your downfall."
Well, let's sort of come towards the end of your time at Swindon, because there's another change of manager. Glenn Hoddle comes in and decides that you get an opportunity to go to Reading, and Craig Maskell comes in exchange. How did that all happen?
I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't want to go. I'd actually agreed an extension of my contract with Pete Day, who was back the finance or secretary at the time, or whatever you call him.
Yes.
And I'd actually shook hands with him and spent 2 to 3 days negotiating the contract, shook hands, and I went back in the next morning to sign the contract, and he said, "I've offered you too much." No, we've actually agreed a contract. We shook hands, and I ended up going to the training ground. Glenn Hoddle came over and see me and just says, "Oh, I understand you're not happy." And I said, "No," I said, "I agreed a contract, and I expect the club to honour that." And I shook hands on it, and I was going to come in and sign it. And this morning it's changed. Trained, and Glenn says, "Well, could you go back to the club? Pete Day wants to see you." And I said, "I'll be honest with you, I'm a man of my word." And it says, unless it's the contract that I've agreed, then I won't be going back to the club. Glenn turned round and said, "Look, if you're not going to sign, I'm going to sign somebody else." So I waited until sort of like 4 o'clock. I got a phone call from, I remember his name now, John Pollard.
Oh yes, John Pollard II. Yeah, yes.
He called me and said, "Look, would you come and talk to us? We've got another offer for you." And I said, "No, unless it's the offer that was agreed, and I won't be signing." And with that, 5 o'clock came, and the transfer deadline was coming through, and they'd signed John Moncur. And that didn't bother me. I was still a player at Swindon Town, and I was a first team player, a regular. And Glenn came to me the next morning and just said, "Oh, you didn't sign, so I signed John Moncur." I said, "That's fine. And if you want to pick John Moncur, pick John Moncur." But I didn't actually want to leave at that time. It got to the end of the season, and the football club then came to me and just said, "Look, Reading are interested in you. We're looking to do an exchange. Would you be interested in talking to Reading?" I just said, "Well, if that's what the football club want, then I don't really want to leave." Obviously, then I was allowed to talk to Reading. There was the exchange of money, or part exchange as such, player for player, and that was it. But this is a true story. The morning that I went to pick up my medical forms from the county ground, I was actually taking them to Reading to sign. John Gorman actually came out and says, "Jonah, don't go, sign for us." But as I say, I'm a man of my word. I just said, "I can't do it. I've agreed to sign for Reading. I've got a medical today. The press, I just can't do it. But I didn't actually want to leave.
Well, I don't think any Swindon fans want you to leave either. So you do make the move to Reading, and you picked up a pretty serious injury there, if I remember rightly, didn't you?
Yeah, in training, and that it was over the Christmas period. We trained at the old Elm Park and 5-a-side on the pitch, and I just started shooting at goal, and Phil Parkinson put his boot up, and it broke my leg. He didn't mean to do it.
No.
It was just a follow through, hit the bottom of his boot, and you could hear it go, because in an empty stadium you can hear it crack. It wasn't nice, but it was an accident. It happens in football.
And how long were you out for?
Well, that put me out for the rest of the season. So summertime, I got during pre-season, I got myself back fit, doing the training. 4 games into the season, I'm ready to back playing. I've come off the bench on the park for probably about 15 minutes, and a lovely guy named Kelly Haag decided to put one on me, and broke my leg again. Same one.
Goodness. And how, I mean, we've mentioned the mental side of it with the Chelsea thing. How's the mental? I mean, we often talk about, the glamour side of football, but the other side of it, of course, is the downside of injury. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I was always, touch wood, really fortunate. As I say, my 4 years at Swindon, Aberdeen, I was never really injured. I did have a hernia operation after the Wembley game. Went to Harley Street and had my hernia done, but that didn't actually cost me missing any games, because it was done straight after. It was almost straight after the Wembley game, and that with the hernia operation, and that, so having to deal with breaking your leg twice. I mean, it's the worst thing in the world. Like when you're a sportsman and you can't run and you can't do the things that you want to do, and you're in a full plaster. It does beat you up a little bit, and having been the first time being out injured for any length of time, it's pretty hard to take, and you always wonder, how am I going to get back, and when am I going to get back? Reading were very good. They put me through rehab. I went into the oxygen chamber on Hawksworth, I think it is, and that. So I was doing that twice a day to speed the recovery up second time around, and that almost halved the recovery rate. And that and I didn't have as many problems with swelling around my ankle, having been in plaster for so long. And that, so second time around, I got myself back fit pretty quick, because I was back sort of just after Christmas, and ended up playing sort of 15-20 games towards the end of the season. So yeah, but being out for so long doesn't help.
No, I can imagine. And as I said before, we often talk about the glamour side of it, but there is the downside of it. And, for a footballer, you just want to play football, don't you? So it's that simple. So we haven't got, time is getting against us. So you play at Reading, then you go to Woking, Forest Green, Swindon Supermarine. But Swindon come back into it, don't they? There is a bit more of the Swindon story. How did that happen?
Yeah, it's just started. I started doing my coaching badges. Phil Cannon sort of got in touch with me to look after the soccer centres. That's all with the kids around the area. I took the job. It was a part-time job, and then Steve McMahon was actually the manager at the time. We had a 5-a-side at the Dorking school, and Tommy Wilden, who was the youth team manager at the time, ended up breaking his leg. He twisted and broke his leg, as Steve would get up and play on and whatever. Having then gone up the hospital and got an x-ray, it broke his leg, and Steve then pulled me in the office and said, "Look, I'd like you to take the youth team. Would you like to take them? And I said, yeah, it's not a problem. And that he stood by and watched my coaching sessions. And at the end of the season, he then just said, look, I want to move Tommy into a different role. Would you like to take the youth team job? And of course, being a Swindon Town boy at the time, well, still am, I'm still here. Yeah, I was honoured, to take the job.
Didn't last though, did it? And I have to talk to you about Armenia, because before that you went to South Korea to the wonderful named Busan Park. I think that's right. I've no idea whether it is. Yeah, with Ian Porterfield, who we mentioned before, as your assistant. What was it like being a manager in South Korea, for goodness sake?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird how that happened, because I'd been in London with my wife. We were watching a show and we ended up bumping into Ian, and I hadn't seen him since my Aberdeen days. Got talking, had a bit of lunch, swapped cards and numbers, and about a year later, I got a phone call. He actually contacted my brother, who lives in Camberley, where his ex-wife was, and said, you need to ring Ian Porterfield. He'd obviously lost my number by that time. And I rang him, and he just said that he'd taken charge of, they were called Busan Icons at the time, and that, would you be interested in coming over? We'll just do the FA Cup. It's at the end of the season, so that was it in November. And that's, I ended up going, loved it, but having a young family, they wouldn't pay for all the education.
Right.
So I just couldn't move. It just wasn't right. And I had my own coaching school at the time in Swindon, and I wasn't prepared to just give that up and lose that much money, because obviously, like, the education out in Korea is very expensive. And so I decided to stay. And then 10 months later, I got another phone call from Ian, and he says, look, I want to offer you the job. This is the package, but come by yourself for the first year, and we'll sort your family out. So they used to fly my wife and the kids over 3 times a year. Mm-hmm. Amazing football club. Like, the facilities and the football club is just wonderful. Like, they couldn't do enough for you. And so, yeah, I ended up staying for the first year, and then ended up winning the FA Cup. We played the FA Cup final on Christmas Day. Who plays an FA Cup final on Christmas Day?
In South Korea, clearly.
Yeah. Played the cup final on Christmas Day, and flew back on Boxing Day to have my Christmas back here. We'd negotiated a new contract, which was a 2-year extension. So hence, that's why I stayed the full 3 years.
But then Armenia come calling. I mean, this is, you've been from, let's be honest, an extraordinary career. Farnborough, Weymouth, Aberdeen, Chelsea, Swindon, Reading, South Korea, and Armenia, for goodness sake. And this, again, is an Ian Porterfield connection as well, isn't it?
Yeah, Ian had taken the job as national team manager. He phoned me up and said, look, like to offer you the assistant manager's job, and that, but don't come full time, just come for when the games, and that at the time were the Euro 2007 2008 qualifiers. My first game flew over, believe it or not, Kazakhstan away. Yeah, it's great. And then 4 days later, I think we played Poland in Yerevan, and they were group leaders, and we beat them 1-0. And that, we just had the most amazing time there. We just changed the culture. Armenia were just sitting ducks, basically. I watched a load of DVDs of their earlier games and games from past, and never see the goalkeeper. They were basically just camped on the edge of their box and damage limitation. Came in, just said, look, you're never going to win a game like this. Let's just, press on. Good players don't like being hassled and doing the things they love to do, and it worked. And the whole sort of culture and mindset had completely changed. We had some absolutely wonderful results. We drew with Portugal with Ronaldo in the team in Yerevan. We drew 1-1. Drew with Serbia with big names in their team. I looked at their team sheet. I've still got the programs now. Players like from Juventus, Inter Milan, Man United, and that. And we gave them a game. They didn't like it. All of a sudden, we're not sitting back. We're pressing on. We're not just going to take damage limitation. And hence, I think we went from 130 in the world to 79.
Well, that's some achievement. Sadly, of course, we've lost Ian Porterfield, and that meant you took temporary charge. Is that right?
Yeah. One of the games was Serbia. And like I say, Clemente was the manager at the time. He got the sack after that because they couldn't qualify. And really, that was another game. We ended up being 0-0, but we absolutely dominated them for 90 minutes. The one thing with Armenia is they never really had a striker, a prolific one. And that, so we're always going to struggle. It was a sort of a makeshift winger, really, that we played up front, who had pace and obviously occupied back fours. And that's the way we went about things. But yeah, I mean, some of the games, to draw with Portugal and beat Poland, who were the group leaders, and we actually went to Belgium, and I've still got the team sheets. When you're looking at Vincent Kompany in the team, we had some really smashing games, and that, as I say, good memories.
Yeah, great memories, I'm sure. And then you come back and you do the rounds of local football, I think it's fair to say, don't you? Swindon Supermarine, Chippenham, Swindon Town Women, I think you're involved in coaching them for a little while. And how pleased are you with the growth of the women's game? Because having been involved with it, it's come on a mile, hasn't it, in the last couple of years?
Oh, I think people underestimate them now, how good they are. Technically very good. Never really used to like the running side of it, the fitness side of it, but technically, they're very good, and obviously the levels that they're getting to now, it's smashing. I like watching it. I mean, some people are a little bit against it, or think it's not really of a standard, but I think they're sort of got their eyes closed to that a little bit.
It's a question that I've been thinking about, and I don't mean this in a patronising way at all. A top women's player like Megan Rapinoe, say, for the States, where do you think she might fit in the men's pyramid? I'm really interested in knowing how far the game has gone. Where do you think that would fit?
It's difficult because, I say, technically, very, very good. But I think you've got to be mindful. The men are so much more physical, and that's where I think the downfall would be, is whether she would be able to affect the game, at a level in men's football, particularly at pro level, because there is a big difference.
Interesting. And you're at Wootton Bassett now, Royal Wootton Bassett, we should say. Yeah. What exactly are you doing there?
They approached me. Sam approached me, and the chairman committee. I had sat down and had a meeting. They were looking for a more a technical coach at the senior level, and also, if need be, to do sessions for the development squad, the under 18s and down, just to be, a figurehead. If I was ever required to do and put sessions on for them. But it was more, with the first team, with Sam and Matt Ballman, and that's it's worked great. We've got a different, like I say, mindset, different way of playing now. Players enjoy it. Probably the league affected us in terms of results, because we were playing a lot of cup games. We had the best cup run, or joint cup run in the FA Cup, and same with the Vars this year. So I think that probably distracted us a little bit, and there were certain games in the league where we didn't have a full squad, and that didn't reflect on really some of the performances that we had, with in terms of results. But we were going in the right direction, and I think we'll be very successful.
Good, and you're about to resume, as we all are. I'm looking forward to playing walking football on Thursday night for the first time in goodness knows how long. And you're all, you're getting back together again, aren't you? You're about to start training again. Yeah,
that's right. Can't wait really. Get you out the house as well, a bit fresh. And that's, I think all the players and the whole football community is, can't wait for it to reload itself, and playing some competitive games.
And Swindon at the minute, they've given them a chance with the last two results. It's not as bleak as it was 2 weeks ago. Have they got a realistic shout at staying up?
I think they have now, yeah. Because I think the teams around them at the bottom are struggling more than them. They've made Swindon made lots of signings, and that takes sometimes a little while to gel. They've picked up a few results, so I think a few more positive results. I think they'll be okay.
You got Blackpool on Good Friday, of course, with the return of Jerry Yates, Yates, who we kind of remember from last season. Tom, thank you very much indeed. Got loads of questions from people who've been watching tonight, so Chris will be back in very shortly. But great to see you, and terrific. What great times. That's all I can say. And those of us who watched Swindon in those days, wow, what a team! An absolute joy to watch. It really was. So thank you very much for that.
Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely superb. Thank you very much for that. I'll just take my blanket off my shoulders because I was cold. Just a few quick fire questions that people have said. So one from Claire: your proudest moment in football?
I think making my debut for Aberdeen against Rangers at Ibrox.
Oh,
that was my full debut. I think that sticks in my mind. 44,000 there that day, and we beat them 1-0.
Yeah, that would stick in your memory, I think, to be fair. Yes, it would. Yes.
Great place to make your debut. One from Steve: biggest influence on your professional career? You've mentioned Ozzy and Ian, and so who do you think was had the main influence on your career?
Ooh, good question. I think I'd have to go for Ian Porterfield, because he signed me from Weymouth, and then having worked with him for so long, and it was a successful partnership. So yeah, I'd have to go with Ian.
And we should, of course, say he scored one of the most famous goals in FA Cup final history. Let's not forget that against Leeds.
So, there you go then.
Yeah, we better put that in because it's a fantastic moment. Yeah.
One from Tracy: are you still in touch with any of your old Swindon teammates?
Yeah, still see quite a lot of them. We mentioned Alan McLaughlin. I see him around. Paul Bodin, the likes of Fitzroy. We're still all Swindon boys. So
a lot of that age stayed in Swindon, didn't they? So it's in the area. No, brilliant. And the last one from James: the best player you played with at Swindon?
Glenn Edel by a mile.
Yeah.
Glenn was a genius.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Tom. That was absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much. And thank you, Vic, as well.
No, an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So next week we're back on Monday, which is Easter Monday, with a Monday night panel where we'll be reviewing the Blackpool game from the Good Friday, and it's the evening of is it Burton?
Burton away, yes.
Burton away. So we'll be looking at that one as well. So thank you, everybody. Stay safe and speak to you next week. Bye.